Welcome everyone to this webinar on ITRS fixed monitoring. Thank you all for joining us today. We are aiming for about 30 to 40 minutes, so hope that everyone can stay with us. My name is Loki-san. I'm one of the technical product owners at ITRS, working on Genios and the Observe product lines. Dave, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, good morning. I'm David Randall. I've been at ITRS now. Been at ITRS now for about 13 years. I'm the global head of our sales engineering function, working closely with Lockie for much of that time.
Cool. Right. Let's get going then. So, agenda for today. I think we've done the introductions. Obviously, we will look at why fixed monitoring, or why you should monitor your fixed transactions. Then look at the ITRS fixed monitoring solution. We'll go into a bit of a demo as well, and finish off with some questions at the end. So one more thing to add, I guess, we are going to assume the people on the call, um, know about fix and what fix is used for. So we're not necessarily going to cover that, and we're going to jump straight into the fix monitoring and the challenges you face with that.
Yeah, and apologies if we will cover some things that if you've been working with fix for a number of years that you're probably more aware of, but a lot of this is for clarification, just kind of understanding just a kind of where ITRS aligned to fixed monitoring and all the trading.
Yep. And if you have questions, please do post them on the questions panel, and we will collect all of that and we'll go through that at the end. Right. Before we get started, we thought we'll do a quick poll. So just one question. So very quick to do. It should be on your screen now. So if you like, please have a go. We'll give a few seconds for everyone to answer that, and then we'll get started with the presentations.
Yeah, and if there's any consolation, this should hopefully, assuming you don't have any questions or what questions you do have, this should be the only part where you need to participate. The rest of it is all on us. So once you've done this, you can sit back and just enjoy the presentation and the webinar.
Right, we'll give a few more seconds for everyone to finish. We're seeing some interesting results.
Yeah. Yeah, so I mean, looking at some of these results, I mean, like Lockie, really, I mean, I've been in this industry for too many years, for 30 years, and I'm always learning new things. It's nice to see there's some things that do surprise me. Some of these results are, not quite what I expected, but it's good to get that kind of feedback to understand where you are in your world today.
Yep. Right, I think, there we go. Oh, that's interesting. We got 25% didn't know that we can monitor the fix. So hopefully today you'll learn something and we can help you get started on that.
Yeah, I mean, what I found, I think, I mean, the interesting thing is, I mean, if you do a search for, some of these fixed monitoring protocol monitoring tools, it is amazing with the sheer volume of fix that is used in the industry today globally, that a lot of people, still don't monitor their fix. They're just kind of assuming it's all working, which is some type of monitoring. Normally they know when the fix is not working because they get a call, and their monitoring solution is a phone call to say it's broken, it's not working. Or the absolute classic is it's slow, which is kind of an interesting concept if you're an application support person, which I've been for many years. So yeah, that works.
Cool. Interesting result.
Yeah,
Right. Thanks everyone for taking part in that. So I think we'll get started now. Right, we'll start with why fix monitoring, or why you should monitor your fix infrastructure. Really, um, like anything, fundamentally, you want to reduce risk, right? There are many types of risk involved in the financial markets. Almost always, there's some kind of financial impact on your business. So monitoring really gives you control over, you know, how you can manage that risk, how you can detect problems, how quickly can you deal with those issues. Regulations come into that too. So you're often required to monitor and report for transparency and compliance reasons. So detecting errors early in the process means that you prevent or minimize losses. This could be technical issues, errors in the message flow between counterparties, things like that. So trying to figure out what went wrong at the the end of the day is much harder, is probably much more costly. So you need visibility through the trading day as to what's going on. And you also want to make sure the critical order flows are functioning well, right? You want to avoid bottlenecks, latency issues, inefficient order routing. For example, monitoring the ACK latency will help detect potential problems as quickly. Um, and it's also useful data to collect, right? So you can make improvements over time to detect operational efficiencies. So again, fundamentally, it's really about the operational resilience and how do you reduce the risk. But in terms of the cost of not monitoring, it's really hard to quantify that, because most users don't want to admit to the true cost of not monitoring. But really, what we are talking about is financial impact through reputational loss, fines from the regulators maybe, or missed opportunities, and inefficient operations. So I think most users have some level of monitoring. You might have custom tooling or vendor provided view of specific components, but really the end-to-end monitoring is what gives you that coverage. If you start to see the latencies going up, for example, there could be a number of reasons for that. Could be your OMS or the messaging pipeline, or Kafka or TIBCO or something that's lagging behind. So getting that full end-to-end visibility is really an important part of monitoring your fixed infrastructure. Dave, you want to
yeah,
add anything to that?
yeah. I think it's quite interesting because I mean, from my personal background, I've come from an operational point of view. Starting from the very ground level. With that, as an operator, all the way through this kind of support, application support for the traders, which is always was always a very interesting position. I think it never did cease to amaze me, and I think the poll kind of reflected that about not being able to understand, not knowing you could monitor fix at 25%. What's really interesting about that is there seems to be, although the whole idea of the webinar is talk specifically around fix, we all know that in that end-to-end flow which you talked about, it's not only fix that's the kind of the protocol that's being used here, or what we're focusing on. Because of this kind of codependent relationship of all the other components in that end-to-end stack, the siloed approach is still apparent today. There's not many people who look at that kind of holistic overview of their whole kind of end-to-end. You've got, and we'll kind of come on to this shortly when we talk about that kind of high-level trading flow.
Yeah.
But from your market data coming in at the initial kind of flow into your environment, all of your trade applications, whether you're buy side, sell side, where that works, there's also a dependency on kind of like the infrastructure at the lowest level. Everything that the tin that it's running on, or whether that's running on the Kubernetes, or you're running in the cloud, wherever you're running that, you've got that relationship with the networks, the middleware, the database. Everything in that stack has got to work. It's not just about the fix application working. And what we often see is that application, the fix the fixed project, some of your trading systems are all working and functioning absolutely perfectly. And whoever supports that is saying, yep, this all works. But if there's a problem with your feed, or there's a problem with a hardware, something as basic as like, a server's crashed somewhere, there's not always that kind of end-to-end, everyone knows what every other person's task is. And that's where this is where we're kind of coming into this, and where we see most problems in that siloed approach rather than the end-to-end overview.
Yeah, I think that takes us nicely into the next slide. So this is sort of a typical equities trade workflow. So it's by no means is an accurate diagram, but I think that the point we want to get across is, the trade workflow is complex, as Dave was saying. You have a number of components, vendors, custom tooling, connectivity with various parties, cutting across multiple teams from, traders, middle office, back office, risk, compliance. So there are lots of moving parts, and having visibility across this workflow is important. So it's not only monitoring the fixed transactions, which is kind of what we are focused on today, but also monitor the wider infrastructure, whether you have on-prem servers or cloud functions, or running some of the infrastructure on Kubernetes, as some users do. You need to monitor the infrastructure, the networks, log files. We can monitor all of those processes, databases, middleware systems, and more importantly, we have enough toolkits that to monitor those custom applications that you have you built internally. Dave, I think you touched on an important bit, is the dependency of the components as well. So all of these components are not isolated; they are all dependent on each other to get that flow going.
Yeah, and that's the key point, right? I mean, that siloed approach, I think that's the key word, right? You see that although they're interlinked, there's not many people, and I've worked in a lot of these kind of, whether it be for brokers or whether these institutional investors, I've seen how this works. I've never really seen a whole end-to-end flow that someone is looking at that says, let's see how everything is working. Down to my ACK latency, down to do I understand what's going to happen in an hour's time? Am I going to hit a problem? That it's always that kind of reactive. When anything's slow or it goes wrong, then everyone jumps. It's that kind of real reactive mentality. And working in there for all those years, that still hasn't changed. And I think where ITRS come into this, and it's kind of like, it's the first time I've really actually seen that, getting that visibility and getting all of the key. And it's more about, rather than just down to, although we're monitoring that kind of lower level, 1 second, or that kind of real-time monitoring aspect of how we're monitoring that the hardware is fine, the middleware, the back, database, everything. It's kind of seeing that service. So could we elevate it up to a service level? Then the idea is we can see that from a holistic view, we can see that the services are all functioning. Now, I may have resiliency built in, so that if something goes wrong, yep, my service is still up, but I've got a problem that I need to look at, but at least I'm not impacted by that. So if we start the real time, now ITRS was developed, its original kind of use case was at market data, and that was what it was kind of designed for. We've always been that purely focused to this kind of FS world, because we understand this world, and because it's where we're born out of. So everything is kind of built on that experience. We know that, take the market data feed. If you've got a primary feed and a secondary feed, whether it be your Refinitives or your Bloombergs or whatever feed you're using, you need to know that you're using the latest information, the information that's got the most relevant, latest, and kind of real-time information. So we can kind of monitor that, and all those traders that are relying on that, we can easily determine and interact with your systems to ensure that you are using that kind of the latest feed. We know that, for example, day trading is unpredictable. And if you want to identify short-term volatility, if you want to buy in the dip, whatever you want to do, you need to make sure you've got the latest information. Using delayed data to place orders is risky, is a really risky, and we all know with this, the price fluctuations are just can hit you hard. And so when Lockie says, you can't really quantify the cost, no, because it's very difficult to understand how much you could have made or how much you've lost. But trust me, there have been some big headline newses with some of the larger corporations who are not getting the basics right just by having feeds that are kind of not realizing that their feeds are delayed, that they're running 2 minutes behind the rest of the market. And if they're running 2 minutes behind the rest of the market, and everyone knows, people are going to take advantage of that. So it's kind of understanding this. But this whole trade flow, a lot of organizations obviously use their own proprietary software to build certain trading systems. You've got the off-the-shelf ones. ITRS does offer that ability to be able to monitor not only the industry standard applications, and we can hook into those, we can adapt to those very quickly. But if you've got your own in-house proprietary systems, or you've written your own databases for your smart order routers or some of your algo stuff, and you're using tracking, we can monitor every single component and give you that kind of understanding of where you are. And what we'll come on to as well is not only give you that in real time, what we're going to kind of lead on to is really how you can look at that information, store the historical information, and with that historical information to understand trends, you can also start to kind of get that forecasting and predictable. So now you're not only looking at what's happening today, which is obviously the most important, what's happening now, but understanding how your behavior is. Are your ACK latencies, if a trader phones you and says it's running slow, how can you quantify slow? It's a very subjective term. So how do I relate that to how it normally runs at that time of day? Is that normal behavior? Is it slower than it normally is? So once I understand that history and that behavioral, I can start to understand what normal looks like, and more importantly, what abnormal looks like. So and that includes pre-trade, your trading window, and obviously your post-trade as well.
Yeah, I think that's why we're going to come on to the next slide. So really here you go.
Yeah. So this is, the idea is, so the key product for ITRS obviously is Genios. This is where it was born out of. That was kind of, we've been going for nearly 30 years now. So we know the industry. A lot of the staff in ITRS are kind of focused on FS, and that's the kind of our key specialization. So if we look here, you've got the start of day. Now everyone seems to know that, before your window opens, before your trading window opens, you need to ensure that everything is working fine. Now, I come from a time when we used to go around our systems, log on to each of our systems. We have a check sheet, and this still goes on today. And a lot of organizations have got a check sheet. We go through the check sheet, and every hour, every half an hour, we write down what's going on. We write down that the system's available. If it's not, we fix it. So when we start of day, we know that everything's up. Now, obviously that worked, and it does work. However, the key problem is the second you've done that, the second you move on to something else, you're blind to what's going on. So if something happened a minute after you checked it, you would not know it until someone phoned you. Obviously now you've got all the help desk systems and incident management systems, so you're made aware very quickly. What we do with Genios, and a few use cases we've used for, we've done this with a lot of the tier ones we work with globally, is we have automated morning checks. So these might run every few minutes, these might run every few seconds, these run at regular intervals. What we can do is, rather than keep on filling your email or updating your intranet sites and telling you about availability, we can post this to whatever kind of medium you've got. If you're using a Slack, if you're using Teams, you want to be notified when things are wrong. When let me know when something's gone wrong, or there's an imminent risk of something going wrong or danger of going wrong. So the morning checks, we do that automatically. And this is kind of like, on a real world, if you're coming into the office, you're just starting your day, whether you can go and get that coffee or whether you have to rush straight into the office. You kind of get an idea of what kind of day am I going to get. So that kind of does that. This is not only my systems are up available, it might be my external connectivity. Can people access the systems from the outside? Is my real user monitoring working? Is like from that digital experience? Is the flow working through the system? Are all my databases have got space, the memory disk, the core stuff, as well as the applications? And more importantly, connectivity for venues. We've worked with a lot of clearing houses, for example, where even connectivity to venues, is a given almost, but they're not realizing they're not, that there's issues there. Who am I dealing with? How am I going to, where are my systems going to kind of work? I need to know what's working and everything's up and running. And again, it also goes down to my market data. So it understands, and also that pre-trade kind of element. So that kind of sets you up for your day. You can do that automatically, or you can do it manually. You can get that to be initiated. You decide what you want to do at what frequency. We can give you best practice, what we've seen works, so we can help you with that. But ultimately, if you decide that you want something different, Genios gives you that flexibility to be able to do that. In your production day, now this is when everyone's on high alert. I want to make sure I'm monitoring my systems. A key USP of Genios, that real-time monitoring. And again, it's not just fix. So apologies if you thought you was going to get a lesson just in fix, but the idea is everything that supports fix, everything that surrounds it, your proprietary applications we talked about, databases, middleware, the rendezvous, every element there we can monitor. A lot of people are using kind of high-end specific applications to monitor certain components of their network. Now, we all know what the key players are in that market. We don't profess to be that all things to all people. So what we do is we made a conscious decision a number of years ago to open ourselves up and to say we can now integrate with these tools. So if you're looking at your incident management systems, if you're looking at your CMDBs, if you're looking at your network specific monitoring tools, we can pull all of that information together. We can either publish data to them, or we can pull it all in from external tools if you've got existing monitoring tools, rather than waste time to reconfigure everything and rip and replace. Pull that information in. All of that visibility we showed you on the trade flow will still work there. So that is key to understand that this is not a kind of 3-year program. This is kind of, get up and running very quickly. We also have this ability to alert you. Like we say, no one wants to get emails, but if you want emails for audit, that's fine. If you want to get your Slack groups, if you want to go to your Teams channels, all of the channels for Slack and everything, we can integrate with all those. If you're using a PagerDuty, you're using, your kind of industry standard mechanisms to notify, we integrate with those. And also, more fundamentally, we do have the ability to remediate these problems. We can automatically restart processes, restart things in certain orders, making sure a reattempt. If problems are still occurring, we have a built-in mechanism to escalate from a level 1, notify a different team. If they're not answering, it's not been resolved, escalate to another team. So we can kind of do all that kind of stuff. So that's all built into that product. Then obviously, you've got your post-trade, you got all your end of day checks, make sure how everything's working, see what the kind of, how much headroom you've got, all of the kind of monitoring maintenance, upgrades that are going onto your systems, making sure everything's working, making sure that when you start doing your post-trade and all your, after your trade day is complete, then you can start looking at the ownership, transfer of securities and cash. You can look at your clearing, your settlement, custody, asset servicing, reporting. We can monitor all of that kind of and give you a picture of how that works. If you have a follow the sun mechanism for your trading window, if you're a global organization, we have a built-in kind of mechanism to cope with that and to understand the different trading windows, we can understand the different venues that with the market data feeds that are coming in. So we understand when they should be updating. A lot of information there. I think, to boil that down, we can cover a lot of these things. We've been doing it for a lot of years. And, we understand what's important. and what matters to you guys, how that works.
Yeah, so that end-to-end monitoring is obviously key. But just to look at in terms of fixed monitoring, so the fixed monitoring solution that we provide. Some of you already maybe already using the fixed analyzer solution that's been around for a few years now. But with the introduction of the RTRS observability platform, um, and the scalability and the data processing this platform gives us, we now have a fixed monitor app that is built on that Observe platform, much more scalable, out of the box, purpose-built application for the fixed solution. So the demo today, which Dave will run in a minute or two, is really focused around that fixed app. Now, what do we get with this fixed monitoring? You get real-time monitoring. You would expect that from ITRS. You get session health with built-in events to monitor the session health. The measuring the latency, so ACK latency, fill latency. So these are really important metrics for the health of the fixed transactions. Drill downs from sessions to view the raw fixed messages or to see the fixed conversations. There's pretty good search and filtering, so you can find and resolve issues quickly. And as you would expect, this has no impact on the fixed engine or the applications that we are monitoring. So we take fixed log files as our input, and we ingest those log files into the Observe platform. There are a number of ways you can do that today. The easiest is to use the existing fixed analyzer plugin. If you have that today, you can, or even the file monitoring plugins we have, like FKM, can ingest log files into the Observe platform. And once the data is in the platform, as Dave sort of mentioned earlier, we are generating metrics and events from that data, and you have access to all of the features of the platform to do historical analysis, to do forecasting, alerting, notifications, dashboarding, and all the good stuff that comes with the Observe platform. I think that's about it. I think we might be ready to kick off a demo.
Yeah. So what I'll do now, let me just get this back. I'll just get this to look here, and I'll bring this here. So, as Lockie kind of said, for those people who know Genios and may have used Genios historically, one of the key kind of USPs is that kind of real-time monitoring. How does that all kind of work? The difficulty has always been we were great at doing the real-time monitoring. What we, but to store all this data historically, reuse this data and kind of make use of this data, we needed something a bit more kind of robust and a bit more analytical to do this kind of work, and a repository to hold this information. So we have a product, as part of the Genius solution, we have this kind of observability and analytical repository that Genius publishes all its data to. So if you've got a number of these kind of different monitoring elements, they may be being monitored by their separate teams as you do today. But any data that you can now bring into Genius, and again, that includes the external tools, that you may be using, that comes into Genius. The data is normalized in real time. And then when we publish that data, we publish it directly to this repository. It's a resilient platform that does this kind of holds all this information. We don't make a differentiation between whether we've created that with our product or whether we've integrated it and brought your data in. So you can all of the benefits I'm about to show you now, you can kind of get that information in here. Now this isn't just about fix, this platform. If we just take, this is kind of I'll show you the fix, what we do for fix specifically. And then we'll kind of show you the other elements that you can do once that data is in there. Because now you've got that data, we can analyze it and kind of move it in different ways, apply different machine learning algos to it, or to see that data and start forecasting that data. So I can show you how you can see that more holistic view as well, not only in Genius, but like this kind of platform here. Web UI, as you would expect. Obviously, this allows for a lot more kind of inline upgrades, a lot more additional functionality and enhancements we're going to bring. So from the landing page, you can see here we've got these session statuses. Now, obviously, in our system today, we've got these 8 sessions. You can see up here the status. Now, because of the trading windows, with Asia being offline, the Americas not quite being online, then you can see here I've got 2 sessions, which obviously you'd have a lot more in the real world, in your kind of world. We've got these windows coming up. So I can see from here what my session status is, what the problems are. I can see why they've got problems, and I can go from there. I can see the status of the connections. I've got some in warning, some in critical. I can see when the last activity is very quickly. I can drag and drop these and sort them in different orders. I can look at the sequencing numbers. I can configure their trade windows if I want to say I've got certain sessions that only work within certain windows, so that in the event that they're not connected, I know whether that's normal because they're outside of their window. I don't have to know that just off the top of my head. I've also got an overview of how many events. It gives you that summary event. It gives that very complex, overview into very simplistic terms. I can see how many messages and the averages over the last hour, and I can kind of trace that. If I look through here, I can drill down and I can see what's happening. I can see every single message that goes between them. I can break this down to see their schedules when they've been inactive, all the rejects that are here. So if I click on here, I just see the rejects for the counterparties and what session, who's talking, whether it's a business message rejection, whether it's a resend request, I don't know trade. So there's a lot of information I can have here. What I can also do is I can look specifically at the messages and I can see what's happening. I can go through here. I can change this just at a very high level. It's just kind of an overview of what we're doing. I can see whether I just want to look at the outbound messages or the inbound. I want to see if it's an application or just a session information. Or if I press the right button, I can start to see, I could go and search just for the message specifically. And you can see here, I've got when they logged in, when they logged out, if there's a session reset, whether there's cancellations, what's happening. And if I want, I can drill down and pick one, and I can see here, I can see the details of this fixed message directly. And I can see all of the conversations. So if I look at some of these which are going through, I think if I pick one, if I look at the raw messages, I can look at the raw messages, I can look at whatever I want, and I can look at what's going on.
It's dummy data, so it's a little bit of a
apologies. There was always a problem there. Yeah, obviously, yeah. So if I look through here, and I can see here, what I can do is I can look at for their total messages. I can see what's happening. I can see what they're doing today, what they did yesterday at the same time, and I can see what they did last week. So I can start as a very simple idea. I can do the same for any one of their metrics. Obviously, with dummy data, you don't get anything exciting. What I can also do when I get all this data and I can see what's going on, again, I can look at every single message. I can look at what their calendars are, who's talking to who. I can change this to what I want it to be, and I can give it a trading window to exactly what I want it to be. Now, to take it a higher level within the Observe platform with this same data, if I look here, again, we're getting all of the different data that we're getting through. If I want to look at my fixed specific sessions, again, the data is there. I can look, I can see all of my counterparties, what session status is there, what's talking. If I click through here, I can start to see all of the information. This is obviously my test platform. So this will tell me all my latencies, my ACK latency, my fill latency, cancellations, what my status is. There's a whole raft of data here. And if you look through here, every one of these metrics I can alert on. and I can see, and you can see I've got thresholds on here to say that I'm above a threshold where I think I should be, and I'll have been notified of that through different methods. And all of the percentiles, you can start to use standard deviation on this. You can start to use a whole raft of kind of data to find out where I'm tracking and how that's kind of working. When I've got that data, I can also put dashboards on it. I can start looking at, if I look through here, I can start looking at what's happening. I can start looking at different time zones, what's happening with this data, how long the alerts were there for. So this is the kind of analysis where I'm looking through. So I can start to look at data that's forecasting now. I can really start getting into what's causing me issues. So if you look here, like we was talking to the trade window, I can see I've got some problems on some of my servers that are giving me, my systems are running hot. I've got some price issues that I've had, so notifications on my price, and that could be from my market data. That could be from my latency deviation. So I can start to see, and even connection statuses. I can start to see that all my data set, and I can analyze where I'm getting the information. And if you look down here, when I get notified, and this is more for your operations team, your support staff, I'm getting a lot of infrastructure alerts, even though this is to do with fix and to do with my trading platform. I'm getting infrastructure, I'm getting equity problems. So now I can start, I've got problems with swaps, and I can start to kind of get that data through and see what's happening. What I can also do is I can set up notifications from here as well. And you can see I can do it to Slack, standard webhooks, ServiceNow integrations. We're adding a lot more to this. But what I can also start to do now is start to get if I'm looking at forecasting, I can now start looking at my historical data and working out where my trends are and when I'm going to breach certain points. Is there a correlation between the number of orders I've got and the latency, or my ACK latency? Have I got a kind of a head, like a high watermark where that's going to hit? Now, because I've got all this data as well, a lot of my industry standard information, for example, I can start looking. If you're using Grafana, we open this up with an API. So every piece of information that's being published is your data. It's your information. You're the only one who's got access to that information. There's no external access to that. You've got full API access. So if you've got your existing tools, your existing reporting tools, your existing analysis, you can hook into this data and get all this information. So all of those counterparties and these sessions that we were looking at, you can look down here. It tells me who's trading, and I've just picked the last 3 hours. I can go back as long as I want. So long as I keep that data, I can look at the previous year, the fiscal quarter. I can look at what's going on. I can analyze that data because it's all there for you to do with what you want. I can look here, I've got Fanboy, so I can look at that data. I can look at my latency as a simple example. How is the green here is my real-time latency, acknowledgement latency. But what I can do is I can look and see what's happening with my latency compared to what the minimum and maximum of what I usually get. So I can see my latency is increasing over what I'm usually getting. Now, obviously, this is kind of like dummy data, so you can start to see against real fixed data, but it's just kind of historic data we've collected. And you can see here, I can start looking at just, my field order count. I can look at the cancellations, the rejections. Am I getting a high level of rejections from one particular session, one particular person I'm dealing with? And so I can start to really analyze that data. So I think, in essence, you can kind of see that because we've got this coverage, because we've got all this information coming in, how we're going to how we process that and how we address that. Now, for the Fix app specifically, when we've released, this will be released shortly, as you can see, and that will kind of give you an idea of we're constantly building on this, and the platform that we've provided for it does give you that ability to just keep on taking those enhancements and making more use and more kind of information with what you've got.
I think it's worth adding just on the fix session config itself. There is an API for that too, so you can configure your calendars and the sessions schedules using API, which would make it a lot easier.
Okay. So I think as a kind of first pass to give you a bit of an idea of where we are, I mean, we can go into further detail. We can look at, you know, specific use cases, how you're going to, if there's any questions around that. But I mean, you know, as a first kind of overview of where we're going, what we're doing today, I think, and where ITRS fits in there, I think that's about. I mean, unless you've got anything further, Lockie, to ask.
No, that
To
was
add to
good.
that?
That was good. I think we got some questions coming through, so we can maybe go back to the slide and take some questions. So, right. Here's one. Is Genios comparable to Beaks, or I think it was formerly known as Velosometrics? Dave, I think it's slightly. Beaks is more of a market data, and I think it's a hardware-based solution. Do you have any more on that?
Yeah, so we do actually. So one of the things we brought up through this call was, you know, we knew that we're not going to be all things to all people, right? I think when it comes to Beaks and like the velocimetrics, we do integrate with those directly. They've got, and again, this goes back to what I said about the network tools. You know, there are some network tools that do the kind of like core on the wire monitoring. They get into the tap, the optical taps. They go in there. They're reading off the wire. Provide their own hardware. We integrate with those because, you know, we don't. That's not our world. The same thing with Beaks and velocimetrics. You know, we work closely with them, so they do what they do very well in their space. We can integrate directly with them, and we do have an environment where we've got that integration working. You know, if there's further information you need there, we're happy to kind of share that if you're using Beaks and velocimetrics today, so we can show how that kind of integrates. We can also publish data into velocimetrics as well, so we do have a way of getting data between the products.
Yep. Cool. Right, next question. For the latency calculations, how customizable is the logic, as the order entry flows can be different depending on the exchange, asset class, etc. So yeah, so in terms of monitoring, no, there is, in terms of notifications and alerting, there is enough customization there for you to sort of define at what level you want to trigger something. The latency calculations themselves, I think today are sort of provided out of the box based on the timestamps. So there isn't. I mean, you can in the fixed analyzer solution, you can build your own custom logic as well. So that's something that you might want to look at. But I guess in terms of, you know, alerting on or notifying of issues, there's definitely flexibility to take the latency figures and then to if you want to then customize it based on an exchange. So a particular exchange might be, you know, expected to be at a certain level, then you can do that. Dave, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I think so. So what's important there really is, and this is if you look at fix and you look at the kind of the different meshes that come across there, you know, when it goes in, when you get the ACK back, you know, and all of the stages, like when it's partially filled, fully fulfilled, when it's cancelled, all that, they will just give you timestamps. So what we add is that derived figure of, so we give it a derived kind of latency based on that. As Lockie said, and it's very important to kind of point out at this point, we're not expecting you to learn some proprietary programming language. You know, we're not expecting you to learn R or S or, you know, the kind of the key ones. The configuration and the flexibility, again, gives you that ability to put in the different routing, different exception-based stuff. Because of the richness of of what we're doing, we do understand that. And again, because we've been in, and one of the benefits of being in this industry, ITS being kind of purely focused on FS, is the fact that, you know, a lot of people are doing similar things in different businesses. So what we bring to the table is more around that kind of best practice. And we've seen, you know, we understand the different routing for different asset classes, for different kind of functions. So we can definitely help you with that and kind of show you and tell you our experience of how that works and to get the most efficient way of doing that.
Cool. So the next question is the fixed monitor feature available in the Genios app? I think by app means Active Console, or is it packaged up with Observe and the Web UI? So it is the fix monitoring. The fix app itself is obviously part of the ITRS Observe platform, and you know you would need the Observe platform to run the fix app, and it is a Web UI, and it's not in the Active Console. You're the fix analyzer solution, which is something that been around for a few years now. That is obviously part of the Genios stack, and that is available in the Active Console. But they're really both solutions work hand in hand. So you know we can look at implementing both if that's what you need.
Yeah, and one complements the other, right? So if
Yeah,
so, I
exactly.
see Mohammed, I see you've got there is a question around the two different parts. They will complement each other. So they each product will complement each other. You can use one without the other, but the idea is you can, you know, that kind of Observe will give you that kind of full stack history. And it gives you that additional functionality you've got there around different forecasting algos that we do have, you know, things like the ARIMAs, the FFTs, that kind of stuff. So we do provide, we've got a lot more enhancements, and we can enrich the data a lot more and kind of give you a better visibility of not only today history, but also the future, really. That makes sense.
Yep. Cool. We have, there's just a follow up on more interested in the specifics of how you're calculating those latency stats. I think that we do the calculations. Okay, I'm going to, I might be, we can definitely get you the actual details. We can get back to you on that. But the calculations are based on the fixed tags, right? Everything we see on the fixed messages. So the latencies are calculated between the order and the acknowledgement, for example. And obviously there are different flows, and we have to have different logics to deal with that. So understanding is something. How long is it taking for something message to get acknowledged? So we track the orders, and we see how long before an acknowledgement message is seen. Hopefully that makes sense. We can get some more details on that, on exactly how that's done. Any more questions? I think that's about it.
Yeah, the only thing I've got to say really is, I mean, look, we know that. So ITS made a real conscious decision a number of years ago that, you know, the market was changing around kind of like different technologies, and the technology has kind of progressed very rapidly in the last few years. So a lot of the information, for example, like this, we're trying to kind of future-proof that with things like, you know, some people publish fix over Kafka, some people publish, you know, I think there might be a move towards people publishing over things like the open telemetry, which seems to be the de facto technology of choice that's coming, that's kind of on the horizon, that people are using today, but they're going to kind of use it more. So we do have the ability to kind of ingest a lot of this data at higher volumes into this kind of observability platform to get that analysis as well. So there is a lot more work going now, and we've got some areas which I think we're going to kind of share with you. I would say to try and keep updated of where ITRS are going in this space as well, because, you know, it's moving at quite a rapid rate, and I think, you know, it'd be good for you to understand where we're going, how we're going there, and kind of what the direction of travel is. to hopefully to give you that kind of peace of mind that when your environments start to change, which invariably they will, with different technologies, whether that be the Kubernetes, the virtualization, the orchestration, that kind of world, the cloud, how we fit into that. It'd be good to kind of keep an idea, just to kind of keep you updated, to share where you can keep updated on where we are, what we're doing in that space.
Yeah, we'll continue to focus on the fixed monitoring. So look out for improvements over the next sort of a few months. And you can get in touch with us in the usual ways. We would love to hear your feedback and ideas. And yeah, thanks for joining, everyone. Dave, you have any last words before we end?
No, I hope this has been interesting. I hope this is what you kind of expected. If there are any questions, if there's anything you want to follow up on it further, I think the details you got provided here, you can get in touch with us here. Not only from a sales perspective, from a technical perspective, people like myself at Lock-in and our teams are more than happy to help. So if you do have any further questions, things that you thought you'd like to have seen, and additional information about what services provide, please get in touch.
Yep, that's it from us. Thanks again, everyone, for
Thank
joining.
you.
Cheers, guys.